Moses, welcome to the Interrupted Podcast, brother. It's good
Thank
to
you
have
for
you
having
on.
me.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Have you been on a podcast before?
No, this is my first podcast.
All right.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I'm glad it's happening here on the Interrupted Podcast. For everybody out there, I was able to meet Moses this morning at church. He came to share a little bit about his experience with Compassion International and everything going on with that incredible organization. And we're going to get into that absolutely here in a little while. But, man, I just got to have a snapshot of your story this morning, and I'm thrilled to hear more about your background, and what a powerful story.
Thank you.
And here on the Interrupted Podcast, I'd love to hear these stories about adversity, because while our viewers and our listeners may not share the experience you walk through, there's an ability for everyone to be able to step back and say, hey, there's adversity that we all experience in our own ways.
That's true.
And having that growth mindset and that willingness to adapt and change is something that I think hearing stories like yours can inspire us and motivate us to kind of work through the daily grind of having the discipline to improve our position constantly.
I agree.
And so, man, let's get into it. Would you just give a brief introduction, kind of about what you're doing now?
Okay.
And what I'd like to do then is we'll walk back.
Okay.
And look at your family of origin a little bit, and just bring everybody up to speed, so to speak.
Awesome. My name is Moses Ashaba. I was born and raised in Uganda, and I came to the United States when I was 24 years old. Yeah. So I've lived in the United States for the last 10 years. I first moved here and worked in Wilmington, Delaware. I worked with an inner city organization called Urban Promise. I worked for them for 2 years, and then I got married and then went to Temple University. That's where I did my master's in law. Okay. And in Uganda, I did my bachelor's in law.
Right on.
And then when I came to the United States, I got a chance to do my master's. And currently, I speak for Compassion. I travel around the country, encouraging people to sponsor children and sharing my story and my background. Simple as, I've been doing this for some time. So I've been to over 20 states and 3 continents, both through Compassion and my personal travels. Right. And I've enjoyed it each time. I get to meet new people. I was in Alabama. I've been to New York. I've been to Kansas. So I've been all over the country and speaking and sharing my story with Compassion.
Right on. And you're married?
Yes, I'm married.
Children?
I have one kid. Her name is Rachel. She's 19 months.
Oh, my goodness.
And my wife is Christy.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Awesome. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet them this morning, but maybe in the future.
Maybe in the future.
Maybe in the future.
Yeah, definitely. When we come to do some other podcast.
I like where your head's at. I like where your head's at. Awesome. Well, Moses, tell us. Let's walk back. First of all, we're going to start your story in Uganda.
Yes.
And could you lay out a little bit about the nation of Uganda, and maybe even just, I don't want to go into a long history lesson because we probably don't have time for that,
yes.
But a foundation
yes.
for that nation, and maybe where it's come from, and maybe even currently what's going on over there.
So Uganda was colonized by Britain, just like most African countries. Not until 1962 when it got her independence from Britain and became an independent country. So we had a couple of presidents after that, Milton Obote, then Idi Amin. You've heard of Idi Amin, yeah. And then some other presidents came in, and then we've had one president for the last 34 years. His name is Museveni. Okay. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. So he has done great work. At the same time, he has critics saying that he has stayed in power for a long time. But overall, I think he has done his part. I think we need new blood in the system. And Uganda has been a peaceful country for most of the part. And they struggle with a little bit of unemployment. There's a high youth population. Okay. So Uganda's population, most of them are below the age of 35. Like 80% of the population is below the age of 35. So you can imagine that most of the kids are unemployed and not finding work. So that's a bit about Uganda for now. Okay. Yeah.
And in terms of, is it a wide variety of income levels? Are there extreme poverty all the way up to the main cities? Are there bustling cities that one might recognize and compare to any city in the United States, or are they all not even comparable?
I think the haves have some money, but the
Uh-huh.
have-nots are really struggling.
Mm.
So most of the people are surviving on less than $1 a day.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So that explains the picture, paints the picture of Uganda, and the haves have taken a lot of money. So most people in the government have taken the money, and the have-nots, most of the youth are unemployed. So those are the ones surviving on $1 a day, and it's a big population.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it doesn't make you sit back and realize how wealthy we are,
Yes.
even sitting in a room with the lighting and cameras and
Hmm.
doing a podcast,
Yes.
those even small things that we just take for granted every day.
Mm.
And from what I've heard of your story, you've been able to see, uh, I guess, the progress in your own life and how different opportunities exist in different places on this globe.
Definitely, I agree. I agree that people have the ability to transform and retell someone's story.
Mm.
Like my story was transformed by a man called Nelson, all the way from Australia. I've never met Nelson, but Nelson spoke into my life through Compassion International.
Mm-hmm.
He sponsored me for 8 years and transformed my life. He spoke into my life and told me that I was the beloved of God. I'd never heard of someone tell me that I
Mm-hmm.
was smart and I was able to achieve. So he spoke into my spirit, and as a young man, I realized that I could achieve. As a young man, my dream was to graduate from high school because that's what I saw everyone doing. I wanted to play in a soccer team in high school
Mm-hmm.
and call it quits. Then, with Compassion International, I was able to excel and graduate from high school. And my sponsor pushed me hard, and it's like, you can achieve, you can make it through college. So I applied and got to law school and worked my way through law school, and I excelled. And it's because of the generosity of a person that transformed my story.
Wow.
Looking back 20 years ago, I didn't have a picture of where I would be, but a person retold my story through their generosity and provided for me scholastic needs, health needs, and I was able to attend school and excel.
Wow.
And that's how I
Yeah.
came to the United States.
My goodness. Yeah, and well, let's mine that down a little bit. Let's
Yes.
dive in. Let's go back to your family of origin. If you could explain maybe where exactly in Uganda you were born at, and what did life look like even back to some of your earliest memories.
So I was born in a small town called Mbarara.
Okay.
It's southwest of the capital, Uganda, Kampala, and it's like 300 miles from Kampala, the capital.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a very loving and humble um, family with both parents. My dad was a country club manager, and my mother was a businesswoman.
Mm.
So it was a simple, humble background. But at the age of 5, my dad decides to leave us and abandon us and left the 8 of us in the custody of my mother, a housewife who could neither read or write. The best she could do was to work in other people's land so that we could get something to eat. On good days, she would return home with the harvest. And on some not so good days, she would come back empty handed. On those days, we would pray together and go to bed hungry. In the piercing of the night, I would twist, toss, and turn with my stomach growling. Going to bed on an empty stomach was the most challenging thing as a child. I would wake up the next day, beaten, stricken with hunger, and pray that my mother would return home with the harvest. So that was my life as a child.
Wow. Do you have any early memories of your father, or were you too young?
I do actually.
Okay.
So I remember he had a bicycle
Uh
and
huh.
he would ride us to school, me and my twin brother Sam.
Okay.
He would ride us to school every day and pick us from school.
Okay.
And those memories I cherish. And he would like help out at home with the house chores. Like, he would feed us and make sure that we are taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So he was a loving father, but I don't know what fell along the way, what happened. And then he abandoned his duties at some point, and I can't figure out what caused that. I can't pinpoint the cause of that.
Were you ever able to, now later in life, were you able to have conversations even with your mother? Did she ever um, realize, like, know exactly what was going on, or is it something that in a survival state you just move on and
I
start?
think my mother had decided to move on because I've tried to pester her and ask her what happened.
I'm sure that.
Yeah, but she has closed that chapter. She doesn't want to talk about it, and
Okay.
she's just moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as a man now, how does that, like, do you still have those questions, or I'm just curious what that is feeling like, especially as successful as or the things you've overcome, and what that means even now as a father.
Actually, I've been struggling and wrestling with the question of being a father, having not had a real father figure in my life, except for Nelson, my sponsor from Compassion, who spoke life to me, and an uncle called Uncle Douglas. I'm not related to him,
Okay.
but this man stepped in and mentored us. He was a mentor, and he spoke life to us, and he really did a great job. And up to today, he still calls me and asks me, "How are you
Does he
doing?"
really? Wow.
Yeah, so those are the people that have played a role in my life. But I still try to grapple the fact that my dad abandoned me at an early age, and trying to figure out what how it has played and affected my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were some of the expectations and responsibilities of a man your age in the town you grew up in? As like what when we think about like when I hear people's story, I only have my experience as a child here in the United States,
Yes.
and so was there a work expectation, or was it just because your mother was working on time? It was playing with friends. What did it look like to be a young boy in your town?
Actually, as a young boy, we had fun. We had fun. We played outside. We did all the mischievous things
Uh huh.
through rocks at mango trees, ran into people's gardens and stuff. So we did all sorts of mischievous things, but it was all fun. So we didn't do anything like legal.
Right.
We just played like young men played. But there were expectations. Like I am right now, I'm expected to provide for my family as an adult, and the expectations as a young man to be an example in the community. So those are some of the examples that I can think of right now.
Okay. And what was your place in terms of all your siblings?
I was the fifth.
You were the fifth. Okay.
Yeah, I'm one of eight, so I was the fifth. So
Wow. So in the middle-ish.
yes, in the middle-ish. I'm the middle kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, what was your relationship like with your family? In
Actually, I
terms
have a good relationship with all my siblings.
Okay.
I still get in touch. I get along with them really well. I call them all the time. I try to talk to
Are they
them.
all in the United States?
So I'm the only one in the United States. I
Okay.
have two siblings in the UK, two in the UK. One, actually, both of them are right now in Bristol.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. So you're definitely spread out. And where's your mother at?
My mother is still back in Uganda.
Okay.
I
She is?
tried to convince her to come and stay in the United States, and she told me she can't manage. It's a secluded society. It's the culture is different, and all her friends are back in Uganda. So I understood her point of view.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, do you get to go back?
I'm actually going this June. I'm
Okay.
visiting her this June, 2021. I'm going to take Rachel, my daughter, to meet her.
Wow.
Because of
Oh
the
my
COVID
goodness.
and the pandemic and all the
Right.
restrictions. I'm going to try and bring her to her.
Yeah. How did Uganda fare with the pandemic?
Actually, Uganda has done well overall because they have had issues with like Ebola, other diseases. So the community is really sensitized and they take things seriously, as opposed to the United States where people are fighting masks and fighting all these regulations. The Ugandans heed to the regulations and the Ministry of Health. So they are faring well compared
Okay.
to Kenya and Rwanda. So Uganda is doing well.
Right. And now, the Kenya is. How many nations are bordering Uganda? Like
So
if we're
there's
picturing on the map.
So on the map, so to the north there's Sudan, South Sudan now,
Yep.
and to the east it's Kenya. To the west is Tanzania and Congo. No, Tanzania is to the south. So, and then to the west is Congo.
Right on.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So now, what was it like in Uganda? Was it something where you ever experienced the other nations that you live relatively close to, I guess, in terms of the structure of the map
Yes.
of Africa? Now, was there any places that you had a chance to go outside of Uganda?
I've been to Kenya and Tanzania.
Okay.
I've been to Kenya and Tanzania.
All
Yeah, and they're quite different. The Tanzanians are more laid back and welcoming. The Kenyans are really aggressive in a way. They are go-getters, if I may say.
Yeah.
They're really fast-paced. The matatus, those are the small buses, are really fast. People, moving up and down. And Uganda is semi-laid back as well, but
Okay.
also as busy as busy as Kenya.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
just fascinating to me of just where you have all the intersections of different cultures, and whether it's an African nation, Asian nations, or
Mm.
whatever the case may be. It's we get so secluded. As large as the United States is,
Yes.
I mean, we look at those differences state to state, but not necessarily nation to nation
Yes.
because of only having our two primary borders.
Yes.
So it's always an interesting dynamic to hear. I guess even beyond politics of
Hmm.
just the cultural exchange that happens.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, well, when you're growing up, it's always fascinating to me how as children, even in the midst of poverty,
Mm.
you don't necessarily feel that poverty,
I
if
didn't
that's
feel it.
fair. Yeah.
Actually, I didn't feel it. The only poverty I felt was the hunger.
Mm.
Hunger really strikes. But I was happy as a child.
Okay.
I was happy. I played with other kids. I knew there was curfew at my house. I'd be back home by 6 in the evening. So
Okay.
I'd go play all day and come back evening, hopefully to find dinner. And at some point when I grew up, then we started going to the garden with my mother to till the land.
Okay.
So we'd till the land with her and spend the day in the garden and then come back.
What primarily were you growing in the garden?
So we grew cassava,
Okay.
corn, potatoes, sweet potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
We grew beans, groundnuts, the ones you call peanuts.
Uh-huh.
We grew those.
Okay.
So we had a bunch of crops that we grew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, was that primarily for sustenance for your family, or would she sell those as well for some level of income?
So Ugandans actually depend on subsistence farming.
Okay.
So they grow food for their consumption.
Okay.
Most of them produce food for their consumption. They can't produce for the market
Okay.
consumption. Yeah.
Mhm.
So they provide for only their families.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was your mother's primary job.
Yes, that was her job.
Just subsistence for the family.
For the family. And she would also till other people's land to get food.
Wow.
Sometimes she would go and work for other people so that we could get something to eat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. What a different experience. What did you think of your mother? Like as just when you had to know she was grinding like
Yeah.
every day.
Honestly, my mother is a superhero. I've met
Uh-huh.
many people, but she's my superhero.
Mm.
I've seen that the investment she has done and the hard work she has done, and I'm really, really, really humbled to be her son and to know that she has cared for me even amidst adversity. She still was a go-getter.
Mm.
She would go out there and try and make ends meet and come back with food at the end of the day. So, and she also trusted God in all things. She taught us how to pray. So as kids, we learned how to pray and to be thankful for what we had. We didn't have much, but we are thankful for the little we had.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, for as long as you can remember, was your mother just a woman of faith your whole life?
Yes, my mother has been a woman of faith. I was born into a Christian family. My father was Anglican, and my mother was previously Catholic.
Okay.
So they are all faith-based. It was a faith-based Christian family. At some point, she converted to Pentecostal,
Okay.
and she's been Pentecostal since then.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, when did you have your first not just I would say the religion and the tradition of faith. When did you have your first encounter with God and to say that this is something I need to have in my life and it was so important to me?
I think when I was 8,
Okay.
when I enrolled into the Compassion program,
Okay.
we started going to Compassion centers. So Compassion partners with local churches
Okay.
all over the world. So they work with local churches. That's how we get sponsors and sponsorships.
Yeah.
spread out.
Flesh that out a little bit more. So we've been talking a little bit about Compassion.
Yes.
And so they are primarily an organization that is bringing not only supplies, education, medical, but their almost charge and mission is to help impoverished children
Yes.
have the necessities of life as well as get the gospel to them.
Yes. So they have their mission as releasing children from poverty in Jesus' name.
Mm.
So Compassion is pushing for the gospel to be preached all over the world through their work, through their relief and their work. So they are reaching out to the list of these, just like we are going to share.
Mm-hmm.
They are reaching out to the most needy people in the world and providing the basics: water, sanitation, food, shelter, clothing, and providing all these things for the list of these for the people struggling and people that are underpaid and people that are struggling. So they are bringing all these things, education, bringing healthcare. So they are transforming the world one child at a time.
As the children in Uganda, in where compassion has some roots, is it, if you're not sponsored, are you very aware of compassion existing?
Yes, people are aware of it, and it's unfortunate that they can't sponsor everyone.
Mm-hmm.
The few children that they take on are the ones that benefit. But once they benefit, their families also benefit. But sponsorships are really hard to get, especially now in the COVID season. Some sponsors have cut back, and some sponsors have not been able to meet as many children as they could because of
Okay.
the
And
setback.
what's the process on the back end? Obviously, when we'll talk a little more specifically about Nelson and when there's someone that wants to sponsor a child. But what is the process for the families that are every day living in poverty and no compassion exists? Are there requests? How are you advocating for your family to become a part of the program on the back end?
So Compassion is a church-based ministry.
Mm-hmm.
So they partner with the local churches all over the world. So that's how they establish and pick out people that are the neediest.
Okay.
So that's how they identify the neediest people and provide the help that is needed. So they even provide, there's a program that sponsors pregnant women,
Mm.
and they sponsor their children as soon as they are born.
Wow.
So I forget the name of the program, but it's there. It's the child survival program,
Okay.
and there's a child development program that's for the young kids from 8 until 18. And then they had something called the leadership development program that I was a part of, that
Okay.
sponsors children in college and onwards.
Okay.
But that was scrapped at some point, and then they now sponsor throughout until college.
So tell me the story of you getting sponsored.
So,
That moment, and just how did that all come about?
so my mother learned about compassion through a close church friend.
Okay.
She set out on a journey traveling over 300 miles to find a compassion office.
Wow.
She eventually arrived in Kampala, and she was able to sign us up for the program. My mother returned home that night with the most exciting news that we had been sponsored by Compassion International. My life was forever changed. I was able to go back to school without the fear of being kicked out. I even got a new pair of shoes. You know how a new pair of shoes feels.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
imagine wearing a new pair of shoes after walking barefoot for a long time. Those shoes were a treasure to me. I would sleep with them uh, uh, like a pillow. I'd keep them safe
Wow.
and polish them every day. So compassion really changed my story. Nelson rewrote my story and encouraged me each step of the way.
Now, when you were first picked by Compassion, was there a time where you were part of the program, but you didn't yet have a actual sponsor?
Yes.
Okay.
So they took my name and registered me
Uh-huh.
in faith and looked for the sponsor. That's how they did back in the day.
Okay.
They'll take your picture and then go out and look for sponsors. So I was waiting and praying for a sponsor. And when that prayer came back saying that we had gotten sponsors, that was it.
And well, that's powerful to me. Immediately when you say something like that of waiting, I can't help but think, and anyone that has been or is familiar with Compassion or has been part of a Compassion Sunday or been to even at concerts that
Yes.
they have the kids available, their picture and part of their story.
Yes.
And just thinking about that as you look at all of these pictures of these children and they're in limbo, so to speak, where
Yes.
they've entered the program, but are still waiting.
They're still waiting for
for
their
life
sponsors.
to be changed.
Yes, for someone to pick them. So they're waiting and praying for someone to pick them and take them on and become their sponsor and encourage them
Wow.
and transform their lives.
Okay. So what does once you found out that you were sponsored by Nelson, what was that like on your end? Because so many people right now, I saw people at church today even taking and being like they were so excited to sponsor this child, and so once the sponsorship happens and someone says, I want to provide money for this family and this child to be able to have and quite broadly just have
Yes.
where they have not had those opportunities before
Yeah.
in their life. What's the process of do you get a letter just from Compassion and then you start to hear from the sponsor? What is that
Yes,
like?
actually you get your first letter from your sponsor.
Wow.
Actually, Compassion reaches out to you and tells you you've been sponsored,
Okay.
and these are the details of your sponsor. They give you a sponsor number,
Uh-huh.
so each sponsor has a designated number, and then they tell you within a few months you will get your first letter from your sponsor. So I always encourage people I meet along the way. I tell them that letters mean the whole world to these kids. Some people are comfortable, sponsoring, but not investing their time writing letters. But I remember Nelson wrote me letters and sent me postcards. This started my curiosity as a young man. I would see him sending me postcards of kangaroos. I've never seen kangaroos ever, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is a different planet. I was living on an African continent, and he was in Australia, all the way in Australia.
Wow.
But he transformed my life. He rewrote my story. And
And what were some of the things in particular that when you say he transformed your life and through those letters, what were some of the things that you would look forward to or things he would tell you? Was it just wisdom or was it just knowing you were loved by someone outside of your family? What was it that really, when you say that transformation?
actually, knowing that you have someone you can write to and draw a picture. Because at some point I didn't know how to write. So I would just draw a picture and someone would write my letter. And they would guide me through the letter writing. They would say, "This is how you say hello. This is how you do it." So I didn't know how to write on my own. So I would write, but I would have a supervisor to supervise my letter. And then I love drawing the pictures. I would draw him nice pictures, say flowers, or draw like vegetation,
Yeah.
my small house where we live. So I draw like any pictures kids draw.
Right.
But that meant a lot to me, having an area to explore and express
Wow.
yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very good, man. I know as we're sitting here, even what I'm thinking about is like my two oldest children, one's 6 and one is 4,
Yeah.
and we're going to be sponsoring children their age,
Awesome.
right? And so that's a step as a family we're taking, but more in particularly, I think that's important for them to be able to realize other people in the world have different needs. But as a child, you don't necessarily look at it as what someone doesn't have. You just get to look at, I get to be a part of their life
Yes.
as a child.
So this is what I tell sponsors. You're not saving the child. You're walking beside the child. You're transforming their lives by walking besides them. Some people think that you can change the child or like create a miracle, but the impact you have on a child is unimaginable. With the simplest words that you write, like how are you? How is your home? How is your family? How have you been doing? How is school? Those resonate a lot with the kids, and they really cherish the letters they get. So I think as sponsors, I sponsor one kid in Tanzania. His name is Nelson, Samuel, from Tanzania, and I've learned a lot from Samuel than I've been able to experience myself. He writes to me and tells me how he helped his grandmother with house chores, and how he plays soccer with friends until the cows come home.
Wow.
So I'm really intrigued looking at life through the lenses of his eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, tell me about. You were 8 years old
Yes,
when
when
you
I
were
got
sponsored.
sponsored,
Okay,
yes.
so Nelson sponsors you when you're 8, and the practical side of that. What is besides the letters? There is a financial part that a
Yes.
sponsor provides.
It's a commitment.
Okay, and
Yeah.
so that commitment. How does when they send that money to Compassion? Is it just as simple as where that money gets into a bank account for your mother to be able to buy these things and pay the schools, and what's the practical side of that?
So the practical side is actually Compassion has a way of breaking it down on their website, compassion.com.
Okay.
So like I would say say you give 100%.
Yep.
So 10% will go to the running the ministry, and then the 90% will go directly to the project and helping the kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. And just, I mean, I know that's a common question is people want to know, is my money actually helping?
Yes.
And so I think that's important. While we don't like to talk about the money
Yes.
side of it, that's the part that actually provides the practical tools that I guess it helps kids move out of just the survival state to actually the thriving and the happiness where they don't necessarily have to worry about the day in and day out of,
I agree.
do I have to go to bed hungry? And I think that's what's so powerful about that piece of it.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to
No,
overstep my
actually,
assumptions.
no, you're saying the right thing. And actually, sponsorships are lifesavers. These kids need the help. They need the support. They need the education. They need the healthcare, and they need the. It's like changing someone's livelihood. Um, it's rewriting someone's story, especially the kids that are living in extreme poverty,
Yeah.
living on less than $1 a day.
Yeah.
They can't afford medical bills, and some kids have to forfeit meals. Yeah.
Yeah. What is schooling for you? What is it traditional 12 grades, or is there 8 grades, or
So
what's the
I went through preschool,
Uh-huh.
and then I had from primary 1 to primary 7.
Okay.
And then after that, I went to secondary for 6 years,
Okay.
from S1 to S6. And after that, I did the national examinations and then went qualified to go to college.
Okay, so you just to be able to have the opportunity to go to college, there's an exam.
Yes, it's an exam.
Wow. And
Yeah.
I bet that was an intense moment.
It was an intense moment. It was an intense moment. I had to, study all night and make sure that I passed.
And that's just a general competency exam of
Yes.
mathematics, history, or is it reading and arithmetic? What's the
It depends on what you want to be. So scientists will take the math. So they are
Okay.
combination. We call them combinations. So if you want to be a scientist, you'll do math, physics, chemistry, and biology, and so on and so forth. And if you want to be an artist, they call them artists.
Yeah.
So you do history, economics, geography, and all these other subjects.
But you have to declare a path at that age.
Yes. So you have to choose one path depending on your strength. Some people are really gifted with math, and I wasn't gifted with math, so I wouldn't be
I'm
a
with
scientist.
you. I wasn't.
Yeah.
Either. Was not either. So, well, even that is the nuance in that we think about the opportunity we have even in the United States to, if I'm tired of doing this one path and move on to a different one, you just at the drop of a hat
Yes.
can go do that. So is there, once you choose that path for anyone that stays in Uganda, it's pretty much you're a lifelong
Yes.
vocation.
It's more traditional and conservative to that extent.
Okay.
So if you choose, like I chose to be a lawyer, that's the world view. That's my expected opportunity to thrive through the legal field. As for the scientists, then they will go the science way. But the challenge with Uganda is like currently there is a lot of youth that are unemployed or underemployed. They have degrees, but they can't find jobs.
Okay.
Because the economy is still struggling. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Once you get into a university and start studying, at that point, was your dream that you spoke of earlier, was it to ultimately get to the United States? And did you want to practice law in a courtroom as a trial attorney? Or
Yes.
was that your initial goal?
So United States was never in the picture.
Okay.
It was never in the picture. I didn't know I would be in the United States at some point. I knew I'd go to school, graduate from college, start practicing like my friends are doing.
Yeah.
That was my dream. And then I met this young lady from the US, my current wife, Christy. She came studying abroad in Uganda, and we met in a small music group. That's how we met.
Really? Okay.
At Uganda Christian University. She had come studying abroad for a semester. We met and we connected and we became friends and became more than that. I proposed to her. She was
Wow.
like, that's too soon. So we took our time and then did long distance for 2 years.
Wow. Okay.
And then later moved to the United States to visit her family. I came visiting for Christmas and then landed an opportunity at Urban Promise in Wilmington, Delaware, that I worked for 2 years. And that opened my eyes to the real issues the United States is struggling with. Violence, gun violence, a lot of incarceration, a lot of single mother household, and a lot of poverty in the inner city. So all that intertwined and changed my perspective of the United States at some point.
Yeah. What was it like for you to working within urban poverty?
Yes.
What was that experience like for you, coming from the poverty you experienced? Because I think there's probably similarities in emotional response, but the actual practical poverty in and of itself is different.
Yeah, I actually learned one thing, that the United States poverty is different from the poverty I'm used to. People are not lacking clothes. People are emotionally poor. Poor are emotionally poor. People are deprived of their rights. People are, people are homeless
Yeah.
on the streets, and people are struggling with drug addiction and stuff like that. So where I came from, people are struggling to get up to get something to eat, and here people are struggling with mental illnesses, struggling with homelessness, and struggling with incarceration and all this systematic racism and all these things that intertwines into that.
Right.
And it's all people are struggling entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does racism look like in Uganda versus here?
We have something called tribalism.
Okay.
So it's favoritism, in other words.
Okay.
So if you're from my tribe, then I'll give you a pass. If you've come for a job and I'm interviewing again for my tribe, then I'll give you a pass.
Really?
That's the
Okay.
racism we face. And in the US, it's more systematic. It's that if you are from this race or belong to this race, there are expectations that are set for you. You either graduate from college or you end up in prison. You either excel or you're defeated. So I think the expectations in the system are the ones that judge from this perspective, from my perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you see the young men and women dealing with that when you were working with urban promise? Did you see like a deep work ethic in them, or did you see more of being defeated and not knowing how to move forward?
Actually, I learned that the inner city kids are the smartest kids. They are tech savvy, they're really hardworking, they know what they want. Either they're working to buy nice clothes,
Yeah.
sneakers, which is really great for me, but also struggling with keeping up with that. Sometimes they find themselves you either work for a decent amount or you sell drugs on the corner and get a bigger chunk of money.
Right.
So it's a cost benefit analysis, and so it's challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To overcome that, to say, hey, you need to work really hard and you're going to make a lot
Yes.
less
Yes.
money.
Yes.
But helping kids understand the satisfaction in hard work in a legal manner,
Yes.
that's a difficult one to do because those economics don't always
Yes.
work out in your
Yeah.
head.
And actually, that's what Urban Promise does. They have something called street leaders. These are young people from ages 13 and on to 18. They are recruited and given jobs. Like they work in camps, summer camps, they
Yeah.
work in after school programs, and they are paid decent amount of money, and they are given a legal payment. So instead of making illegal money, they are earning legal money and taking them off the streets.
Yeah.
Which is a nice program. So I feel that some nonprofits in the cities are doing such an incredible job transforming lives of kids everywhere.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's powerful. We got to talk briefly about our friend in common, Jeff, and
Yes.
the good work he's doing. And
Yes.
it's, as you're talking about, it's like go right back to my conversation we had in an earlier episode with him. And
Awesome.
I mean, what is being learned not only by the children but the staff?
Yes.
Is it's so rich, and I mean, you've had to have taken those experiences, and even now have the reward of that time in a neat way. So no, it's an incredible program. If definitely if people are looking to be involved in an urban setting, that is an organization that
Yes, Urban Promise.
I think very highly of.
Yes, Urban Promise is doing a great job all over the cities.
Well, when you were finished with Urban Promise, had you already been at, it was Temple, correct?
Yes,
that you
Temple,
went- so
yes.
Had you already graduated from Temple at
No,
that point?
I volunteered with them first, and then they brought me on staff for 1 year, and after that I signed up. I signed up to Temple,
Okay.
and I was accepted at Temple University.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What was that like going to a major American university? Like Temple?
Actually, that was exciting. I was from Uganda, and then you come to the United States, and everything is exciting, and things are new. So I was ready to meet new people, mingle with kids, and college kids, and get to know them. And so I was really excited. I was at an exciting period of my life. So I was rubbing shoulders with kids from all over the United States, which is really humbling. So I learned a lot from them, and they're open to teaching me and showing me things, how to run the ropes and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel that is there a large Ugandan population at Temple? Did you have other
No,
friends?
I had an Ethiopian friend,
Okay.
a friend from Uganda, one friend from Uganda,
Wow, okay.
and other friends from African countries that were represented.
Amazing. How long were you there at that
I
university?
was there for 1 year.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very good. And that was just was that a master's
a
program?
master's program. Yes.
Okay. And
Yeah.
now, well, I'm just curious of this. Did you have any issues with your education from Uganda and all the acceptance and things converting over? And I just am curious
Yeah.
about it.
So it's really intriguing that they didn't recognize my degree in
Hmm.
the US. They wanted me to first go through all these certifications to make sure that my degree is approved before I could get admitted.
Hmm.
And also knowing that there are corners that you have to cut, not to cut like in a bad way,
Right.
but you have to go through the process, the whole
Hmm.
process. So I think there are stringent measures with the United States education system where they are really serious weeding out, people who don't qualify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's important to make sure that people are coming there and having the most success
Yes.
possible, and
Yeah.
that helps the university as a business, and it
Yes.
also is you're going to have much better experiences, and you're going to have people enter the workforce
I agree.
in a much more successful way,
I
which is
agree.
ultimately the goal.
Yes.
But so you're not a practicing lawyer right
I'm not a
now.
practicing lawyer. Yeah.
So bring us up to the current state. So you leave Temple and after having your master's degree, and where did you have a trajectory that's like, all right, here we go. I'm going to go in and become a trial attorney, and I'm going to join a firm, or what was your vision
So
of
my
life?
vision was to take the New York bar.
Okay.
So New York bar allows foreign trained lawyers
Mm-hmm.
to take their bar. That was my plan. So I wanted to apply. I actually applied to New York bar.
Okay.
And they got back to me and told me I hadn't been barred in my home country, so I couldn't take their bar. So
Interesting.
every
Okay.
every bar in the United States is very different from the other. So a Pennsylvania bar is different from a Maryland bar, and the Maryland bar is different from a Colorado bar.
Mm-hmm.
So every state has its own regulations. But New York allows foreign trained lawyers to take their bar. New York and California.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you did sit for it.
I didn't sit
eventually?
for it. No,
So you never did.
I'm still in the process of getting barred in my home country.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, are you going to have to go back for an exam?
Yes, for an exam.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then that'll set the process in
Yeah.
motion. So, what was the process of coming on and doing the work that you're doing now that is so important in this in speaking on
Yes.
behalf of the children of the world, quite
Yes.
frankly?
Yeah. So it's been a journey. I started in 2012.
Okay.
That's when I started speaking.
Wow.
And then I took a break for like 4 years and then got back into it. But it's been humbling knowing that I'm transforming kids' lives, that my story is getting sponsors to connect with the kids that they are sponsoring and to get new sponsorships. So that's the most important thing for me. And learning that these kids are in need and they need the help right now. Yeah.
Have you had any experiences where, since you've been doing all the speaking on behalf of these children, where have you gotten to travel and see any of these children or meet some of the children you're speaking on behalf of? Have you had the opportunity to do any experiences like that yet?
I'm yet to go meet some of the kids.
Okay.
I'm planning on visiting Tanzania and meeting my sponsored child, Samuel, and I'll hopefully meet other kids that have been sponsored in his center.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What are you learning right now?
I'm learning that generosity, people have a giving heart, and that people are willing to share the little they have, and people are transforming lives. I'm learning that it's these small gifts that $1 a day can transform a life. A little over $1, because it's $38 sponsored through Compassion International, and that's a cup of coffee for you. That's a Dunkin' Donuts for you.
Yeah.
So giving up that and transforming child's life is really important. I've learned that it's simply the simple things that we don't, the minute things that we don't pay attention to, are the details that are transforming kids' lives. Yeah.
Yeah, that is incredibly powerful. And when you break it down to the smallest, I mean, the amount of money that many of us just every day throw away.
Yes.
And that and I'm guilty of that as well. I'm not speaking of, I haven't been sponsoring children for years. I can remember being in high school and college and going to concerts and having Compassion Sundays. And, we spread ourselves thin in many ways, or what we think is thin. But I don't always necessarily think that, that has to be the end of whether the financial gift or just deepening our faith and our commitment and our belief in what can be for so many people in the world.
Yes, I agree.
And I think it's an incredible opportunity. The longer that I get to learn about organizations such as Compassion International, I am moved personally, but I also, much like today, want to have a platform like the podcast to be able to let people know that these opportunities exist in such a way that these kids are going to directly feel the benefit.
Yes.
There's so many places and so many ways people give an incredible amount of money in this nation. They just do. I'm not going to say that we're just I don't want to call us just stingy. It feels that way at times.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good being done.
Yeah. Especially the government gives out a lot of money. Like there's something called the US aid. They give out billions and billions of dollars to countries in form of AIDS vaccine. Now they're giving out vaccines. They're giving out clean water, healthcare material. So actually, the American people, it's called the gift from the American people, the US aid. And I think the US doesn't know. Most people in the United States don't know how much they contribute to other countries.
Yeah.
But it's a big contribution. Yeah.
Yeah. Before we close, could we just address maybe a negative mindset that I'd like to help overcome of people, and that is one that a lot of times people think that, well, I'm just giving another handout. What's different about how, in your experience, did you feel that this help that you were receiving in some way just caused you to be a lazy person?
Not at all.
And do you understand what I'm getting at?
Yes.
Like, could you speak to that a little bit about how it's how that money actually causes you to work harder? And what I think about is even how you said the appreciation of those shoes that you had, and how that caused you to actually drive and work harder to become successful.
Yeah, actually, the money that Nelson sent me did not only help me, it helped my family. So he would send me like a birthday gift of, say, $20. That would buy us fuel. That's firewood, in case you didn't know what fuel is. Firewood, buy us charcoal, buy us food for the night, and provide clothing for me. Yeah. So that wasn't a handout. It was saving lives. So I don't look at it as a handout, and people are struggling and working hard their butts off to go through school, because they know that their money is coming from someone who is not related to them. So they're working with their might to excel in school so that they can keep in the program. Yeah, so I don't think it's a handout. It's more of a hand up.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like that, and I wanted. It's easy for me to sit and try and explain that, but as someone like yourself, that you actually, the appreciation that I hear you have towards a man like Nelson is so important, and other stories I've heard of children that have been part of a sponsorship that exists in a real way.
In a real way.
And I think that's something to take home, and for people to look forward to, of being able to sponsor a child and hear back from that child and have conversations with their own families here in the United States. I think the opportunities can be endless with programs like this.
I agree. So if anyone wants to sponsor a child, they have to go to compassion.com.
Perfect.
And pick a child. You could pick a child with the same birthday as your child or your family member, so that you always remember to write them and, encourage them.
Yeah.
So, and sponsorships change lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
It is.
So what about for having you come and speak at a church or an event? How does someone get to hear more about your story? How do folks connect with you? Is there any way to do that?
Actually, I'm not a social media guy.
Okay.
I try to keep it on low key. I try to connect with people mostly in person. I love connecting with people in person.
Yeah.
I don't have any platform to say that this is why, as a speaker, I have a platform. But Compassion has a page for me. If you go to compassion.com and Google my name, Compassion will show up. My little story about me.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, we'll make sure I link all that up in the show notes that
Yes.
people can check that out.
Yes.
And what did we miss, Moses? We boiled a lot down to an hour conversation here.
Yes.
That you have such this powerful story. And is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience that you can think of?
I think what I wanted to tell them that is that a small amount you think is really small can go a long way. $1 a day can go a long way. Can get a kid through school and through college and provide for their basic needs. Get food, shelter, and also get a quality education, and that we are all interconnected. Now I'm in the United States and I'm giving back, so you never know where that kid will end up. Or I've had kids being lawyers that were in the program, judges, magistrates. And these kids are giving back to their own communities. So you're not only helping one child, but you're investing in the community itself. So it's a good investment. So there are returns. You can see there are tangible returns. So Compassion is sponsoring over 2 million kids now.
Wow.
And those kids are going to impact the world in a very, very, very important way and transform their communities and their families for a lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Man, this was so good.
Awesome.
I can't thank you enough for, I know your day is insanely busy, that you even rushed over here to do this kind of at the last minute. But I'm so thankful we had this conversation. And definitely I look forward to hearing from, all of you that are listening. Please let me know if you're considering this, on the fence. There are so many people that beyond me that have sponsored children, and if you have specific questions, I assure you there can be answers to those questions. If you're wondering about the financial part, or actually the logistical of where do I sign up, where do I go, I'll put all the links to Compassion in the show notes. So,
Yes.
Man, inspiring is what it is, but it also it makes me want to take action, which I think is where we all need to arrive at.
Yes.
And appreciate what we have and know that there's always a little bit more to give.
Yes.
And we as in a sponsor are going to have a benefit in this relationship as well.
Yes.
And so
it's an equal relationship. So you give, there's a joy in giving and a joy in receiving.
Yeah.
So I've been on both sides. I've been on the receiving end and I'm now on the giving end. And I'm seeing the fruits of both ends and the joy that it brings along the way. So through child sponsorship, you can help a child realize their dreams and reach their full potential.
Right on.
That's key. And you also help children to identify themselves and recognize who they are in society. So it's a worthwhile investment. That's what I call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So, man, thank you so much
I appreciate
for coming
your time.
on the show. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Take care of yourself.
I will.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.